All right, everybody, welcome to the Fairfax Sports Report. My name is Greg Wyshynski of the Connection Newspapers, BJ Cooperulis of the Connection Newspapers, Jeff Graham of the Connection Newspapers. Don't let your eyes deceive you. This is not a meeting of the Denim Appreciation Society. This is, in fact, the Fairfax Sports Report, and here we are with our spiffy shirts, and we're feeling good about life. All right, coming up tonight, we've got regional swim, a little bit of state swim preview. We've got a look back at the Super Bowl. We've got girls and boys basketball bracket breakdowns as we look towards the district tournaments. We've got a little bit of wrestling, we got a little bit of gymnastics, and we have a bit of Winter Olympics preview, including whether these two knuckleheads know anything about the Olympic events themselves. So there's a lot to get to. Before we get to it, let's talk about the folks that make this show possible every single week, talking about the underwriters. CCI Screen Printing for all of your screen printing needs, 703-978-0257. And, of course, Quality Care Ford Service Center, servicing all makes and models, 703-383-6299. All right, boys, before we get going with the fun and games of all the stuff we got to talk about, we do have some news and notes to get to at the top of the show. We've got some hirings and one resignation. Let's start off at South Lakes High School, where someone who's sort of been waiting in the wings to get the top job over there when it comes to student activities has finally been elevated to that position.
Yeah, surprise, surprise, Reston fans and South Lakes fans. Linda Jones, the longtime assistant AD, who has been at South Lakes for about 16 years altogether as a coach, assistant athletic director, several different capacities, also a health and physical education teacher, has been elevated to the director of student activities. And it's a position she's held as an assistant for 7 years. And as the administration was going through the process and taking applications and going through that whole interview cycle, it was pretty evident that Linda would be elevated to that. And I spoke to a couple people at South Lakes. Principal Bruce Butler is very excited to have Linda in that position. She knows the school. She's been at South Lakes, obviously, like we said, for 16 years. There's nobody better for this job. Head football coach John Ellenberger, same thing. His quote was, "Everybody would have been shocked if it wasn't Linda." So it's good to see that the county comes through and puts somebody in that position who belongs there, who knows what it takes, who's been in that school, and has been doing that job now, Greg, for a while, since they were waiting for that position to actually be eligible to be filled. Because former AD Pat Henthorne, her actual retirement, even though she wasn't at the school for over a month now, was not official until February 1st. So they could not fill that position, and Linda had actually assumed that role still as an assistant, but unofficially was pretty much running things along with Bob Grauman, who was also helping out at South Lakes. So it's good to see Linda, who was a standout basketball player at George Mason University, still holds some records there, local product, come through and get that position and run that school. And hopefully things will look up for South Lakes.
Absolutely, and it's also good to see the status quo being kept as far as, you try to take gender out of these equations sometimes, but it's hard to ignore it. I mean, now we still have a maintain a level of about 5 female athletic directors in the northern region. You'd like to see more, but 5 is a solid number. It's a good start, and it's good to see that some schools go in a different direction after they have a female athletic director. They hire a male athletic director after that, and then sometimes there's a long span before you get back to that equity. So it's good to see the status quo being maintained, and hopefully it continues a trend of more and more women getting into those positions where, quite frankly, for every male sport, there's a female sport, so it only makes sense if more women get involved at the administrative level in the northern region. So there you go. So, all right, South Lakes makes the hire. WT Woodson also makes a hire for its head football position. Trey Taylor, who is the assistant head coach under Jerry Pannoni for the last 2 years, takes the head coaching job over there. Good choice, and an interesting choice, though, because, you look at the way that situation went with Pannoni leaving after 2 seasons. First season he wins the Northern Region Championship in Division 5. Second season things don't go very well, losing record. Several players quit the team early in the season. There's some upheaval, some controversies here and there. And then someone from that coaching staff gets the job. I talked to Dan Chakowski, the Director of Student Activities at Woodson, about that, and he said, we're really happy with the way this program has been directed in the last 2 years. It's not as if we don't like the direction it's heading. So, whatever sort of situations were affecting Pannoni during his time at that school, it doesn't seem like, according to the administration at least, there's going to be any carryover, even though Trey Taylor was the assistant head coach last season.
It's good to see that, because sometimes when you see a head coach leave, you see a lot of assistants sometimes maybe shuffle out or go look elsewhere for other assistant coaching jobs. Or, the goal is always a head coaching job. So it's good to see maybe they're keeping it in the family over there, and maybe Pannoni had a bit to do with that decision and where the program was heading. But it's good to see that that maybe they're keeping it in the family and not totally jumping ship after Look, let's face it. 2 years ago they had a great season, and one bad season doesn't mean that it's totally tanking over there at Woodson. So maybe keeping some of that coaching staff involved is a good idea.
And you talk to other coaches in the northern region, and they do say that there is a steady pipeline of talent that comes to WT Woodson. It's not as if this one season is going to be indicative of a drought at that school for a prolonged period of time. There always seems to be football talent coming through that school, so maybe Coach Taylor can turn this thing around pretty quickly. You never know. All right, one more football note. Chad Lewis, the head coach at Robert E. Lee, the last 2 years, has resigned. He's heading down to be the head coach down at Stafford High School, Fredericksburg. He's a guy, an interesting guy. He moved over from Washington Lee to take the Robert E. Lee job, and he really had sort of a truncated preseason his first year. He only had the job a few months before training camp hit, and I thought he did a really good job getting that team going and contending in the Liberty District. Then in the first year here in the Patriot District, he went 6-4 and had him contending early in the season. So he did a good job at Lee, but obviously, the Stafford job is a bit more geographically favorable for him, so he moves down there to that school. So Robert E. Lee now with a coaching vacancy over in Springfield.
And now for Lee, they're looking for their third coach in 3 or 4 years. Pannoni, Jerry Pannoni was there before, moving over to Woodson, and he wasn't at Woodson very long. So again, they're going to want to find a guy, I believe, who's going to stay there more than 1 or 2 seasons. You never like to see a coach only there for a couple years, and there's going to be turnover, because now you got to find probably some assistant coaches and of that stuff. So they need to solidify that coaching job.
We shall see. We shall see. All right, moving on to the sports that are actually occurring at this point in time, starting with swimming. Starting with regional swimming, where there were some pretty big surprises, I think, looking back at the winners and losers at the regional championships held at Oakmar last weekend. First and foremost, the Fairfax girls come up and win their first Northern Region girls team swimming championship in school history. That's a pretty old school. When they get the first anything at a regional level, it's always pretty noteworthy. Anything in particular that Fairfax was able to do to kind of move ahead in a pretty crowded field on the girls' side? You had teams like Braddock and Robinson and teams like that kind of vying for the same title.
I talked to head coach Matt Salerno over there, and he's only in his 3rd year, so wow, what a turnaround you see in the program. And these regional meets, I mean, it's kind of crazy. You never really know what's happening while you're there, and I was there, and I didn't even realize that this was happening. I mean, there's no scoreboard per se, and that was the point he made. And he was doing the math in his head, and he saw where things were being placed, and he didn't say anything to the girls. He has a fairly young squad. He didn't say anything. He wanted them to be oblivious, and it worked out well. They got the title, the first, like you said, the first in Fairfax's school history. Ellen Baumgartner had some strong swims, a bunch of individual swims that really helped Fairfax get to that region title. So it was a very special moment for them. Coach Salerno put out an email to the whole team after that event and kind of broke down where everybody finished and the effort they all made as a team, and it really was that. There was a lot of strong individual finishes, but it really all coupled together to push Fairfax over the top. So it worked out for the Rebels. On the boys' side, Greg, Robinson obviously defended that region title. They come through in their first year in the Concord District and get that Concord District win, and they just keep steamrolling through, and it's what we've seen out of Robinson for years now, and another region title to add to the Rams' storied history in swimming. Drew Finelli took the 200-yard title as he did in the state meet, and also now he took second though in that 500-yard freestyle to Madison's Alex Anderson, who last year took second to Finelli in that event in the state title match. So it was kind of I guess you want to call it a vengeance for Alex Anderson, who took first in that Liberty District event, and then went on to defend that, I guess if you want to call it, the region meet. and edged Finelli at the wall. Finelli has been nursing a back injury, but after the 200 yard, he said everything was fine, and a couple of events later, it looked like he maybe didn't get the finish that he wanted. So I guess that sets up a great rematch in the state meet, which is the one that they had last year.
Absolutely, and Anderson's a kid who's always in the hunt in the 500. That's his event, his forte, and he actually, I believe, entered the event with a higher seed than Finelli too. So from a statistical measurement, he was the favorite, even though Finelli obviously is a bit more of a name. He's got a bit more renown. He's got the state titles to his credit, that sort of thing. So it is a great win for Alex Anderson to knock off Finelli at the regional level. But like you said, it could be a different story once we get to the state level. Any other kind of surprises that you saw at this thing? I know the Yorktown girls were in the hunt for the team title. I know Kim Case got shut out in her individual race, which was sort of a surprise. Zach Wise from Lee comes home with a regional title. Anything else that was sort of surprising?
Katie Hinkle from Yorktown kind of blew everybody away, and she had two first place finishes, and just both of them were automatic All-American times. And as Suzanne Shui from Stonebridge, guys, you talked to her, Jeff, and she wanted to see where she measured up against this AAA talent and where she did it last year against the AA kids. So I guess her coming in, and you talked to her. She said she had the best meet of her life. So
she swept 2 events. She won the 100-yard butterfly, 100-yard backstroke, and this is a kid who at the AA level last year set the state record in the backstroke. I think she swam kind of low 57s, and she was actually I think seeded second in that race, and then went about a second and a half below her seed time. So this is a kid that really kind of stepped it up. I believe she beat two Yorktown swimmers in both of her races. Both of her times were All-American, All-American automatic times. So I mean, going into the state meet, here's a kid who's going to be favored swimming in her first year on the AAA level, and she's just a sophomore. I guess I was a little bit surprised. To see the South Lakes girls who were, we talked about last week, who were kind of just got some sickness going on there. They had the flu or something. Really weren't able to even compete in this meet. They were still sick, and not the way I don't think they wanted to try to defend their state title. We're going to see, if they can do anything on the state level. In swimming, it's kind of good because if you can get times that qualify you for state during the regular season, you don't necessarily have to compete on the regional level or district level to get there. So we're going to see if some of those kids can step up this week.
I'm looking specifically at the state swimming championships coming up in 2 weeks at Mason. I think the first thing you have to wonder is about the Fairfax girls. This is a team that didn't exactly do it with a bunch of individual stars. They're a team that does it with depth. When you start to add in teams from around the state into the equation, all of a sudden some of those second place, third place finishes, they become fourth place, fifth place finishes. So the question becomes, does the team with depth like that necessarily have the same chance to compete for a team title that they had at the regional level?
Probably not. Usually you have to have 1 or 2 kids, carry. I know last year with South Lakes, kids like Mae Christensen and Carolyn Bellis, they always excelled in the relays and were able to take, I think, first place or second place, late in the event to kind of win it. But they're a team that didn't even win their district or region, titles last year. So maybe at the regional level where depth can kind of get you through. I think we saw that with Fairfax. Fairfax didn't win their district title this year. At the state level, you're gonna have to win at least a couple races to get you those 20-point totals that'll carry you pretty far. So I mean, I think that's why Robinson on the boys' side is able to go as far as they did with a kid like Finelli, who's going to be swimming at a top-notch college program.
And even
when he
last
graduates.
year, looking at a kid like Steve Sharon and guys like that, I mean, they were able to really kind of do it with star power, along with having a lot of those guys that fill in on the relays and really make those things work.
Another guy we should talk about in going to that next topic of the state swim this week, who got the regional tournament win, and he's been haunted by the same kid, is Zach Holmes, a Robinson swimmer who was totally stoked to win his event, and he edged Patrick Stevens, who's a Centerville kid who's gotten him the past 2 weeks in their dual meet swimming and the Concord District swim. And so Zach came up big and got the first place finish, and so those two will square off again in the state meet, like we said, which is coming up in 2 weeks. So there's going to be a lot of good rematches from this region, from this area is usually where the stronger swimmers and from the beach are going to come and face off. So I guess it's going to be good to see how those guys shake out.
There you go. All right, from the pool to the pools. The Super Bowl, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everybody had a good time on Sunday. I know some of us probably had a better time than others, and some of us probably shouldn't have had as good a time as we did. But it was the Super Bowl, 21-10. Steelers win. You know, I never knew there were this many Steelers fans. I got to be honest with you. Everywhere I go, I see more and more Steelers. It's like the Red Sox. It's like as soon as the Red Sox win, they all come out of the woodwork.
Let's just hope they're not the new Patriots.
You know,
that's for sure.
one would hope. But anyway, let's start off with a topic I know that we've debated a lot in the newsroom this week, which is the Super Bowl MVP. Now, I am in the minority on this one. I know that for a fact, that I don't think that Hines Ward should have been given the MVP. That's not to say he didn't deserve it. It's not to say that he wasn't a good choice, but I happen to think that Ben Roethlisberger, with the pass to Ward to set up the first touchdown, and then scoring the first touchdown, which, you know, whether you think it is or it isn't, I mean, it was a touchdown. That really got the ball rolling. At that point in the game, Pittsburgh was done. They were dead. They were buried. And I think you look at him, 9 for 21, not so good. 123 yards, okay. 2 picks, not so good. But he did have the rushing touchdown. He did make a couple big plays. I think he actually ran for a big first down before the Randall L. touchdown pass. And he even threw a big block on the Randall L. touchdown pass as well. So I think he had a very, very strong game in a kind of a deceptive way away from the stats. And I think from an emotional standpoint, he gave it to Big Ben.
Okay, look. I'm going to preface this by saying I wanted Pittsburgh to win. That was my pick that I made on the show last week. But, you know, nobody played on that team MVP style of football. But if you're looking at stats and you're looking at, and that's what they look at when they look at these things, or a game-changing play. None of that happened for Pittsburgh, okay? First of all, Roethlisberger's touchdown wasn't even a touchdown, and that's debatable, and they reviewed it, and there's going to be crazy conspiracy theories. But look, Roethlisberger didn't do anything to lose the game. He tried when he threw that pick on the goal line, but he didn't do much to win the game either. And I think Hines Ward caught the touchdown from who? Not Ben Roethlisberger, from Antoine Randall L. And it was more of a team effort. And I hate hearing that because you always get that cliche from coaches and everything, team effort. But really, that's why Pittsburgh won. And they were forced to pick an MVP because it's a tradition. And who had the better stats? Hines Ward. So it was pretty easy that he was going to get chosen. Nobody did anything. They were begging to get Jerome Bettis into that end zone because that's what they wanted. They would have given him the MVP if he had sniffed the end zone, and he didn't. So they went with the second best thing, and they're not going to give it to Roethlisberger now because he's too young of a guy. He may get there again, although with his conversations with Dan Marino that we heard about all week, he may never. But, Ward is a guy that's been around and had the numbers to back up an MVP selection.
I can't remember another Super Bowl where it was so hard to pick. Usually, I mean, sometimes there's a clear guy or there's 2 or 3 people to choose from. This one, it was
a barren wasteland.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think of the 2 biggest plays, you think of Willie Parker's big touchdown run early third, or the Antoine Randall L. Touchdown pass. So for me, it was strictly based on stats, and Ward had good stats. He caught the touchdown. But honestly, it could have been Antoine Randall L. catching that ball or another receiver catching that ball. So this year was, I think, a disappointment when you think about who was going to Disney World.
But the thing they always say about Ward is that he shows up in areas that don't show up in the stat column.
And he's always been known as the best blocking wide receiver.
And so he did some of that in the game too, which if you're looking at most valuable player is what it is, he was that. And obviously he was because he was selected as that. But there's always things that don't show up on the stat sheet that I think Hines Ward is famous and known for doing, and I think that helped in the selection process.
And luckily for him, they don't include drops in the box score.
Oh,
luckily for him. All right, let's get to this other topic that's been just tearing up. It's nearly caused a civil war in the newsroom this week. I have to admit to you. I'm going to pull back the curtain and admit to all of you at home. It is insane how many people in the newsroom have an opinion about whether or not there was a secret cabal, in effect, a conspiracy, if you will, to hand the game to Pittsburgh on the part of the referees. Now, to me, and by no means am I the measure of sanity. I don't think that I am at all. But you have to be absolutely bonkers to think that in any way, shape, or form the referees tried to hand that game to the Steelers. Did they have some bad calls? Of course they had some bad calls. There are bad calls in every game. But to sit here and tell me, and this is coming from some logical human beings. I believe they're humans. I didn't do the test, but I think they are. To tell me that a referee is throwing a flag on a holding call because he knows when he's throwing that flag that it's going to result in a big play for Seattle, when he's throwing that flag, that's insane. That's like rubber room insane. But yet there are people that believe that. Most of them in Seattle.
All right.
But some of them here on the dais tonight, folks.
But let's not just preface this argument to make people who believe that there was some sort of conspiracy out to all be crazy. I'm not of the Mulder and Scully, as you called me and Jeff earlier. I'm not of the X-Files belief that there was some secret memo that was sent out to the referees and all of the officials who would be in the replay booth to hand the game to Pittsburgh. I do believe, though, that there are biases on the field. And I do believe, like Duke, they get the calls. Okay? Duke always gets the calls. UNC, they get the calls. When they play each other, the rest don't know what the hell to do, okay? But in that game, Pittsburgh is the more storied program, the more storied team. They have the swagger. They're going to get the calls. Cowher's been around for a long time. He's well respected, and it's just they got the calls. What was the differential? You mentioned 7-3 in controversial calls.
Controversial calls.
The numbers speak for themselves. The Pittsburgh touchdown in any other game would have not been ruled a touchdown. The push-off in the end zone would have not been ruled a pass interference called in any other game. And when it's the Super Bowl, Greg, I believe that you get every call right. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no we'll get you on a callback call. There's none of that. You should get every single call right, and I don't think they did. I don't think they did that.
Now, Jeff, before we get to your insanity, we should point out that, in fact, the penalties were 7 for 70 yards against Seattle, 3 for 20 yards against Pittsburgh. Some of you may remember the Super Bowl last year when one of the teams had 9 penalties and the other team had 6, and the team with 9 was New England.
And we know that everybody loves New England.
Yeah,
the dynasty has to continue.
The referees wanted to take away the... Yes, Jeff?
I think if you look at the penalties, I think Pittsburgh's, at least 2 of them, were kind of like the black and white penalties, the false starts, where it's not a judgment call. I think if you look at the big plays that Seattle had, judgment calls took away the touchdown to Jackson, certainly. The holding call, I believe, was a judgment call. And I don't even know what the referee was saying when Hasselbeck was trying to make a tackle and he got called for an illegal block. Because normally, if you're blocking, you're on offense. And at that point, he wasn't on offense for sure. And that pretty much set Pittsburgh up near midfield. I think my problem is with normally these big games when we're talking about referees is you're not supposed to be talking about referees after the game. And this postseason, when we were talking about the Indianapolis-Pittsburgh game, all people were talking about after the game was the big blown call on Polamalu's interception. Nobody's talking about Parker's big run or the reverse for the halfback touchdown. All they're talking about are the referees after this game. And I think if you're doing your job, we're not going to be. And this is supposed to be the best crew,
right?
The crew that got the highest grades during the regular season. And I can't remember during the regular season too many games like this where 2 or 3 calls were so highly disputed.
I am all for conspiracy theories. I think that the NFL ended New England's first Super Bowl win 2 seconds early because the Patriots had run out on the field. There was a big celebration, and they didn't want to send them back to the sideline.
What about 2 games prior to that with the Raiders game?
The tuck rule. Okay, I believe that Patrick Ewing, they rigged the draft so the Knicks could get him, and I believe, without a doubt, that Jack Palance read the wrong name when he read Marissa Tomei as Best Supporting Actress. There's no question about that. I love conspiracy theories. I just don't think that this one holds up. I don't think it holds up to the scrutiny. I really don't. Because I think when you look at it, there have been other blown plays at the end zone. The Roethlisberger thing was unconscionable. There's no question about that. But you know what? The pass interference thing, he had both hands on the DB. Don't put your hands on the guy. Just catch the ball. The holding call, oh, my stars. A blown holding call in an NFL game. I haven't seen that before. I'm a Jets fan. I see it 3 times every single quarter.
But in that case, it's difference between going 4-12 and 5-11.
Oh, now
this is
that's-
the Super Bowl.
Now you're just being hurtful.
This is the Super Bowl. That's the point. You're supposed to have the best of the best teams. And like Jeff said, we should be talking about the game afterwards. And when the referees make themselves obtrusive to the game, they become part of the game. And they shouldn't be part of the game. They should be there to make judgment calls. And pretty much every judgment call they made was controversial and pretty much wrong. So,
And I think that's that's why we had one of the reasons we have replays, for people to kind of look at this and make sure they don't make mistakes. The Polamalu interception, 99% of the people at home didn't even have to have a second thought about that, and yet, these refs are getting paid, pretty good money to call these games. They make a horrible call like
Bonehead.
that. So
this might seem hypocritical after doing about 12 minutes in the Super Bowl, but our next topic is actually Super Bowl overkill. And to me, I don't know about you, but I came in on Monday and everyone had watched the game. 90 some odd million people watched the game, and everybody's talking about the game and how it stunk, and everybody's talking about the penalties, and everybody's talking about the Rolling Stones, and everybody's talking about the commercials, and for some reason this year it just felt like bleh. It just felt like, all right, now everybody is in on the joke. Now everybody has watched the same game. Everyone's making the same comments. Everyone hated the same commercials. Everyone liked the same commercials. Everyone thinks the Rolling Stones are too old. This, that, and the other thing. And to me, it's almost as if the Super Bowl has become, and I hate to say this because I never thought I'd say this, it's become too big. I think people I come in on Monday morning, and that's the last thing I wanted to hear, because everyone you talk to is talking about the same stuff over and over and over again.
well, first of all, the Rolling Stones are too old. They're about 97 years old, and they're dinosaurs out there, and God knows why they were chosen to do the halftime show. I thought Mick Jagger was going to drop dead on stage, and didn't you mention? Somebody told me. I think when I was watching the show at my buddy's house, he said in their insurance contract, defibrillators have to be present at their shows that
Wow.
they do to make, just to kind of, that's part of the contract. So in the church sidebar there.
Did you ever think it's because they rock that hard?
They do rock very hard,
Right.
but I mean, I think it's kind of lost on everyone when you've heard the same song 72,000 times.
It's true.
Mick
And I think
Jagger
out
doing
of
the same old dance.
out of 40 Super Bowls, I think they've done about 38 of them. So I think it's gotten old. But anyway, with the overkill thing, and you mentioned a lot of people have the same opinions, but I also believe that that's because the Super Bowl has gone so mainstream. There's nothing. I mean, the last time anything was crazy about it was when there was a wardrobe malfunction. There's nothing. Now it's a mockery, really, of itself. The whole pregame show. The questions were all, this is such a big moment. How do you deal with this big moment? And it's like, it's not just a big moment anymore. It's everybody talking about the big moment, and it's pretty old. I mean, I guess.
So it's like it's the old axiom: you can't be cool if you're constantly talking about how cool you are.
Except in my case, because when I talk about how cool I am, it's true. You guys know it. Come on, you guys at home. When I talk about how cool I am, it's true.
Are you tired of the Super Bowl, Jeff? Did you get the same sort of malaise that I got on Monday morning?
Well, I decided not to turn on the television at noon to get the 6 hours worth of pregame coverage. But I mean, even you have the 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, which I wish they would just go down to a week. But I can understand why they have to kind of cater to some media. But even during the week, you heard the same story about Joey Porter and Jeremy Stevens. Is there going to be a war? And I even said going up to the game, they're probably going to meet twice on the field, and it's not going to have any bearing on the game. And Stevens caught maybe 2 passes, dropped twice as many, and Porter made 3 tackles, and there was nothing to be heard of it. And throughout the week, that was the biggest story on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a disappointment. And I think in some ways the game was disappointing. You had a team in Seattle that really nobody can, unless you're from Seattle, can really,
Care about?
get behind or care about, unless you're married to someone who's from Seattle.
From Seattle, right? Exactly.
But yeah, this was just a Super Bowl that I don't think lived up to its billing, and it was oversaturated as far
There
as
you
the
go.
media was concerned
And
beforehand.
did you know Jerome Bettis is from Detroit?
Yes.
It's true.
Nuh-uh.
No, seriously.
Are you serious?
Seriously. Girls basketball time. Getting back to Northern Region action. The postseason's nearly here, and we are going to talk a little bracketology, boys. And I want to start off in the wacky world of the Liberty District, where things are constantly changing, but it appears as though maybe, just maybe, we have ourselves some set matchups for the tournament, with Madison on top of things.
Madison has just, Jeff, you and I were at the game. We called the game for Fairfax Sports Network's Game of the Week. They blew out Langley, and it wasn't even close. And I think that's what Madison has been able to do to the district, barring that Marshall loss early in the year. They've won 16 now consecutive basketball games throughout the season. They're 11-2 and they're 11-1 in the district and 18-2 overall. And it looks like they're drawing that 8th seed Jefferson for the first round of the Liberty District Tournament.
I like the fact that they can shoot on the perimeter. I think they're approaching about 100 3-pointers on the season, and we saw their inside game really dominate in that. And they have youth and experience up there. I mean, just looking at who they're going to go up against. I know they said they lost to Marshall. But Woodson and Stonebridge, the 3 and 4 teams, really, I mean, from having covered Stonebridge the last couple of years, I really don't think they pose a threat. And they've defeated Woodson twice this year. So, I mean, I think this is Madison's district, to win. I really don't see them falling before the region semifinals. If we can try to predict, what's gonna happen. I mean, their team is deep enough and talented enough to get that far.
Is there some significant separation from the top 4 to the bottom 4? Do you think any of the lower 4 seeds, which at this point are Jefferson, South Lakes, Langley, and McLean, can pull an upset in the first round?
Langley.
Oh yeah?
I do. I mean, from what we saw this weekend, I know that it's not going to be a popular choice. I know they didn't really do well in the game against Madison, but let's remember, that is Madison, and Langley did lose a lot from last year, but they have the tradition at that program. They have a coach in Cheryl Buffo who has such a great history at that school. She's been there for almost 8 years now, and she's really done. This is her first losing season in all of that time, and I believe she's going to have those girls ready for the postseason. I think they have a shot against Woodson.
And Woodson is a team. I believe they only have one senior, and they have a first-year coach. So maybe that kind of plays into it. Where if you have a team that's not as experienced, going deep in the postseason. And McLean, a 4-5 matchup with Stonebridge, that's always a possibility. Stonebridge is in their first year in AAA, and just who knows how they're going to react to a big time game, their first year in this classification.
And McLean is a team that can pull that off in the 4. We usually see in the 4 and 5 matchups. McLean has been very manic this year. They're up and they're down, and you don't know where they're going to finish on any given quarter, let alone any given night. I mean, and Mike O'Brien, the coach over there, will tell you himself, look, we'll come out and we'll have one bad quarter. And they're now starting to hope that it's the first, so they can get it out of the way and go and finish strong. Ashley Cole is a heck of a player there. Jess Stillman, those two have really carried that team. And Terrell White and Marianne Bell over at Stonebridge are going to have their hands full against a team that can do it inside and outside in McLean. I think that's also another potential upset.
And then nationally, you've got Edison and Mount Vernon as the 1 and 2, pretty solidified there. Over in the Patriot District, TC and West Springfield 1 and 2. Those two could potentially flip-flop. Lee is sort of entrenched right now in the 3 seed, and it's been a great year for them. They're a young team. I'm very impressed with their abilities defensively. They came out with a great game plan against West Springfield last week, nearly pulled off the upset there. So I think they're going to be a dangerous postseason team. Another dangerous postseason team out of the Patriot on the girls' side, I think, is Hayfield. They're scrappy, they're well coached, and I wouldn't want to face them in the first round. They've played some pretty tight games, I think, this year against pretty good opponents, and I would not necessarily want to play them in the first round in the Patriot. Over in the Concord, I mean, you have the big dog on the block right now, the Oakton Cougars, and then Westfield's second, Robinson, pretty much entrenched in the 3 spot, and then you've got some separation to the latter part of the district. Oakton and Westfield, is there any chance Westfield might take care of the mighty Cougars in the postseason?
I don't think there's any chance that anybody's going to touch Oakton in the postseason. It's going to be difficult. I think if anybody has a shot anywhere, it's Edison or maybe Madison. And that Vienna rivalry always works. Those rivalries are crazy sometimes. You never know how things are going to work out. But I think Oakton is pretty set. I think they know they're going to have their hands full when they play against Edison, and that's going to be later, in the region tournament. But as for the Concord District, I think it's theirs for the taking.
Yeah, I think the 2 Westfield games against Oakton have been pretty clear-cut. I think the team that's played Oakton the best was Centerville. That was a 12-point game when they've played the second time. They're going to be playing this Friday. So a key matchup, Robinson and Chantilly in the first round. If it stays the way it's played up to this point, that could be a good game. And Coach Dade was out scouting the Centerville Chantilly game yesterday. Got to look at Chantilly. But Hernan and Centerville, here are 2 teams that The Hornets beat the Wildcats twice this season. The second game, Hornets won by 2 points, and Centerville didn't score in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, that's a game where I could see a potential upset. Herndon hosting, kind of a young team. Centerville, has a lot of different scores. I think they have two kids, Jen LeBaris and Renee Watson, average around 10 or 11 points. But I went to the game yesterday. They had 8 kids score in the first half. So they're a team that doesn't really rely on one or two, but can get it done with a lot of people.
And Herndon is a team that maybe does rely on a couple of kids. Emily Baumgartner being one of those players who's one of the top players for Herndon, and it's good to see that. She's a sophomore,
Mm-hmm.
so the Hornets are going to be set for a while. And wow, they surprised some people, climbing all the way into that 4th seed, building off some of that boys' success over there, and they're going to host a game. For
Yeah,
the
I
first
think a
round
lot
the
of people
Concord.
saw them finishing, maybe 6 or 7, because based on what they did last season, which was not a whole lot, but they've played well to get to over 500 so far.
Impossible trivia time, boys.
Uh-oh.
We are going to dispense with the pleasantries and get down and dirty with some impossible freaking trivia. I will go first, boys. As you know, the Super Bowl trophy is named after Vince Lombardi, the
No.
legendary coach.
Come
It's
on.
true.
I thought it was a Stanley Cup.
No, it's true. It's Vince Lombardi. How many NFL titles did Lombardi win with the Green Bay Packers?
Well, NFL titles, then, it means that you're saying before the merger?
Now, hey, look
Looks
at
like
the
it would
brain
have
on
to
Brad.
be. Because, see, that was a trick question, he's saying. NFL titles. So I'm just
NFL.
going to throw out a 7.
Jeff,
I think it's after the merger if it's NFL.
I swear to God.
3.
5.
Wow.
It's before the merger. Knucklehead NFL.
NFL, AFL.
Thank you. Maybe it included. I don't know. I got it off a
Football
off a web-
titles
I-
is what he was going
Yeah.
for.
Jeff, do you have a trivia question?
I do, and it's possible, but maybe only for you.
Okay.
Who was the last defenseman?
I take offense.
Who was the last defenseman to win the Conn Smythe Trophy for the playoffs?
Would that be number 4, Scott Stevens?
Yes, it would be Greg, who
man.
you had the pleasure of seeing.
I did indeed have the pleasure of heading
He
up
won
to New
the
Jersey to
what?
see Scott Stevens get his number retired by the New Jersey Devils, the first Devil to get his number retired. Of course, Scott Stevens spent a few years here in the D.C. area before he got good and won a lot of cups.
And before the
Cool.
Capitals got bad.
Do you know what the Conn
Yeah.
Smythe Trophy is?
Is the Termites trophy? What is that?
Conn Smythe Trophy. Do you know what it is?
Oh.
It's for the playoff MVP.
Well, that's great, man.
There you go.
Now, you said he spent some time here in the D.C. area?
Yeah.
Was he actually gambling or part of the NHL?
No,
ring, or-
Not everybody in the what are you going to paint with a broad brush now because some guy in the NFL in the NHL got pinched for gambling?
Call me Picasso, baby, because I'm Peyton.
Do all NFL wide receivers kill people?
All right.
It was in New Jersey.
It's true. All right, boys, bracketology.
Excuse me.
Boys, what?
Excuse
You have a
me.
trivia question?
I have a trivia question.
I thought you didn't have one.
I did my homework.
Oh, God.
And ladies and gentlemen at home, by the way, it's not about Chuck Norris for the first week in 3 weeks. What were the name of the brothers that competed in the 1993 U.S. Olympic Gymnastics Festival?
19 what?
The 1993 U.S. Olympic Gymnastics Festival.
The brothers?
Brothers.
Randy Fitzpatrick and Patrick Fitzrandy. No?
93?
Kind of gross, Greg. Kind of gross.
I think there were some brothers called like the Ham brothers. I don't know.
Mike and Peter Masucci.
Masucci. Yeah. All right.
That's why they call it impossible.
Dominique's
Impossible
brothers.
trivia. Hey, now boys basketball. Oh boy.
Oh, yeah.
We got some stuff to talk about here. Now, I was over at the Fairfax Robinson boys game last night, Concord District game. Fairfax takes the win, 60-53. The news coming out of Fairfax is good if you're a Rebels fan, which is that Joey Shoemaker, a kid who broke his arm basically in the preseason, he's now on his 4th game back. He's a high-energy player. He's a big-time player on both ends of the floor. If he can get in the groove, they're going to be a dangerous team coming out of the Concord District. Right now, they're the 3 seed, and most likely will probably face either Centerville or Chantilly in the first round.
And it's just too bad that Shoemaker's back just in time to lose to Herndon, because Herndon is just going to destroy everybody in its path. I believe they beat Westfield 80-59 last night, and that was their closest in-region game, I believe, this year. So Herndon has just blown away the field. They're undefeated in the district, 12-0. They win their 3rd district title, 17-4 overall. They're getting the first round bye in the district tournament. Westfield's taken that second seed, and they're taking on Robinson. But look, Herndon's unbeatable in that bracket. It's just not happening. They're going to get that 1 seed for the Concord all the way through to the region tournament.
I think Herndon's closest in-region game was the first time they played Westfield, but I may be wrong.
That's what I meant. Yeah, that's what I meant.
It could be Fairfax that could give Herndon its best run. If you look at the other teams in there, Oakton, Robinson, Chantilly, Centerville, I think all believe they have losing records. But Westfield, the key for them might be that the Concord District Tournament will be played there, the finals. At least the finals. It could be the semifinals. But if they can get to that finals game, the first game against Herndon was a closer match. It was about 10 points going into the final couple minutes. So, but it's Herndon's for the taking.
But we have to mention one team that just got very interesting. Oakton got the 4 seed. They're 4-7 in the district and get a 4 seed, and 6-14 overall, I believe. So not the greatest record, but it's not indicative of what they are now. They got Chris Despins back. He's a crazy player in the post, plays with what Chris Dukes called reckless abandon, and he really is a force in there. Scored 23 points in one of his first games back from injury, a knee injury that he suffered in a car accident in the preseason against Herndon. Granted, Danny Jones was not playing in the post that game, so it was not against Herndon's biggest post player, but he did score 23 points and followed that up with 15 points in the next game in the win over Chantilly. So they will be playing Centerville to protect their 4 seed this Friday, and I believe they're going to keep that home game for the district tournament, and will be a different team at tournament
And
time.
who would have thought they would be hosting a game? Early in the season, they looked like they could be the 7 seed and playing Westfield in the first round. But like we said, I was talking with Jim Smith about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, and he said once Oakton gets Despins back, they're going to be a different team, and they've proved it.
Good job out of them. Over in the Liberty District, a pretty significant game played last night, and the Madison Warhawks making a big statement.
I was at the game last night, incredible atmosphere. A lot of people came out. It was kind of low-key because nothing really crazy happened. It was tied up at one point in the third quarter, 38-38, but Madison pulled away after that. Julian Vaughn, the South Lake center, wow, what an incredible shot that kid has from the outside. They had a shot to take the number 1 seed going into the Liberty District tournament, but Madison battled Vaughn off, and really, that was done because of the weaker guard play of South Lakes. It has to be mentioned. When you can't hit an outside shot, the defense is just going to collapse on you. Brandon Altman protected the paint. Vaughn had about 19 points, but I believe if South Lakes could hit some outside shots, I think Vaughn could be a player that could drop 40 a night. He's got the huge physique, the build for it, but you have to talk about John Oglow from Madison. Dropped 24 points on South Lakes and turned it on in the fourth quarter, was 4 of 5 from three-point land. Kid was just unstoppable. This is just days after dropping 40 points over McLean in what was originally believed to be a school record. It was later found out that Nick Greiner scored 42 points in 1982, so it's the second best single game performance out of a Madison Warhawk. Kind of a quick little tidbit there for you. Oglow did just get his 1,000th point, and they also have what many believe to be the Liberty District Player of the Year in Warren Edney, who gets it done on both sides of the floor. So Madison is just stacked. The big three are all going to play college basketball. Warren Edney, John Oglow, Brandon Altman, and they've got a guard in Robert Shank last night. 6 points, 4 steals, 4 assists, only 1 turnover, and Madison turned the ball over only 4 times as a team.
Yeah.
So that's hard to beat. And I think they're going to stay that way all the way through until the region tournament.
Yeah, it's a problem when South Lake's best shooter on the perimeter is your 6'5" center. And from what you just said, it sounds like they didn't get a lot done on the defensive side of the ball, only creating so many turnovers. So, but looking at the top 4 in there, I don't really foresee anybody having too much trouble getting onto the semifinals. Langley versus Woodson.
Marshall.
Or Langley versus Marshall, and then McLean versus Woodson. I know McLean scored a little bit of an upset earlier this year. I think it was over South Lakes.
Right, 1-point victory.
1-point victory, but it's going to take a huge performance for I think any of those to move on.
No question, and I think that the characteristic that the Liberty District and the Patriot District both share this year is there's a lot of separation from the good and the bad in those districts. I think Madison, South Lakes, and Woodson are all going to hold serve as the top seeds. Maybe Marshall Langley is the only one that's a bit of a question mark over in the Patriot. I think their 4-5 game is going to be the only question mark because I don't see Lee beating TC. I don't see South County being Hayfield, and I don't see either Westpot or Annandale knocking off Lake Braddock now that Lake Braddock has Rich McGee back in the middle. I think that those 3 top seeds in both of those districts are basically locks. And then maybe you wonder if the 4-5 game might provide a little bit of surprise. But it looks like I think in all the districts right now, outside of maybe the 3-4 seeds in the national, if maybe Wakefield or WNL takes a tumble, or maybe even Edison, depending on how things go. I think you look at the Concord, the Liberty, and the Patriot, the top seeds there look very strong heading into the postseason. And I wouldn't be too surprised to see them all hold serve heading into the regional tournament.
I'd like to see South Lakes and Madison meet up again in the Liberty District Final because South Lakes is a tournament team. And I think that will be a better game than we saw in the first couple of times they've played each other. So they are a tournament team. I'd like to see them get another shot, but it just looks like Madison's going to be pretty unbeatable. What's your sleeper team of the region?
Sleeper team of the region, without a doubt, is Lake Braddock because they are one of the most well-coached teams year in and year out. To get their big man in the middle, if he's in playing shape, if he's fitting right back into the scheme, the game plan. Remember, when he went out, Braddock was one of the best teams in the Northern Region, and they actually stayed that way after he did go out, beating Westfield in the championship game of the Hubert Davis tournament. With Rich McGee back in the middle, they become an extraordinarily better team because now teams are going to have to worry about him inside and Chris Kuntz on the outside. And that's a team that I would be really concerned about if I was somebody. If they wind up being a 3 seed out of the Patriot, I could see them beating a 2 seed in the regional tournament first round.
I'm thinking TC could be a team that could go places. I know we were kind of.
There's no way you can call them a
Don't go out on a limb.
No, not sleeper.
Right?
But
Wow.
as we were looking in the region,
Do you like Pittsburgh next year in the NFL?
we were looking in the region tournament, and they could have a matchup with Hernan to get the region final, and that's a team. And if we move back a game, Hernan could be matching up with South Lakes in the game before that. So if TC can do their business like they could be a team going to the region finals.
My sleeper team, hey, what do you know? Marshall and Oakton, huh? Did you know I was going there? Marshall and Oakton, I believe those two teams. Marshall is the only team besides Herndon in this region to have beaten Madison in the Liberty District. Well, any team, okay? Any team in this region has not beaten Madison except for Herndon in the first game of the season. It was a 10-point win for Herndon. And Marshall. Marshall beat Madison twice. One was on a buzzer beater. So that's a team I would definitely look out for. And like we said, Oakton, they are not a 4 seed. They're a 4 seed because that's what their record indicates, but they just got so much better, so much faster. So watch out for those two teams.
All right, well, briefly touching on some other postseason action here in the Northern Region, I want to mention the wrestling tournaments in all the 4 districts are coming up this weekend, which means you have a chance to go out and see some of the more interesting contenders, I believe, in the Northern Region in their district play before they get to regionals and start meeting up with those kids that you've been hearing about, all these dream matchups that we've been hearing about all year. I think from the Patriot District, obviously, you look at a wrestler like Mustafa Ibrahim from West Springfield, the Braddock team, to see what kind of people have been talking about Lake Braddock's depth all year. It'll be interesting to see what they are able to do in the Patriot District as a team heading maybe into the Northern Region to potentially challenge for a regional title. Anything you're looking forward to this weekend in wrestling?
Langley easily takes the Liberty District title, no question, hands down. They've got a great core of kids. I just want a couple names I want to mention. Sophomore Michael Bowman is ranked 7th in the state, tied for first ranking in the region. He's 26-4 overall. Kevin Canto is a senior, 9th in the state, ranked first in the region at 112, 24-6. Colin Zoski, a sophomore, ranked 5th in the state, 3rd in the region, 29-4. And also David Helmer, a freshman, ranked 3rd in the state, 1st in the region, 24-2. So you really can't deny Langley's depth. They have it at a lot of the lower weights. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do in the upper weights. But I think Langley easily takes the Liberty District title.
In the Patriot, I'm looking for my guy Chaz Flood from Lake Braddock to do well at 112.
You like his name. That's you.
I do like
know
it,
nothing
but
about this young
but
man.
according to Frank's ranks, he's 4th at 112. So I look for Chaz.
Frank's ranks a very dependable measure of wrestling.
Concord, I think Westfield has 6 kids ranked, up to the class of 140, top 4 ranking. So I think Westfield will take the team title there. But for
you speak so soon, my friend. There's a little team called the Robinson
I don't
Rams
know.
making their first appearance over in that tournament this year.
I think they're going to give them a run for their money.
All right. Well, I think Robinson's going to be interesting to watch. You got Matt Jones at 171. You've got a bunch of other kids. You've got George Billy over in the lightweight. It's going to be interesting to watch who comes out of the Concord actually.
I think
in some of the weight
two
classes.
kids that are definitely coming out. 189, Mike Waters at Centerville, and Colin Miller at heavyweight, both undefeated. As the last time I checked, with over 40 wins. So these kids could be winning state titles.
And we're going to get to this in shows to come, but we should mention, so people can get all geared up for it,
Right.
that Robinson will be hosting the state tournament at their facility for the first time. This tournament will not be in the beach area in 14 years. So it means these kids get the home field advantage. They get to sleep in their own beds. It's something we'll get to talk more about in the weeks to come, but something to look forward to for wrestling fans. This place is going to be flooded by many beach fans and many big wrestling fans. So it's going to be interesting to see what these guys can do when they're on their home turf at the state level.
Chaz flooded.
Chaz will flood
flood.
this area.
Gymnastics, congratulations to the Lake Braddock Bruins, winners of the Patriot District, and also Jeannie Shank, the all-around champion over in the Liberty. You had the Cavaliers, I believe, winning, right?
Cavaliers did win, and then the Concord Oakton won the team title.
2
and
for 2 for Mike Cooper.
Terrence Saunders won the all-around for Chantilly.
There you go, and the regional gymnastics coming up this weekend. All right, also coming up this weekend, the Winter Olympics in Torino or Turin. And BJ, as you pointed out before, Turin is one letter away from
The constellation
from
of
urine.
Orion.
There it
I'm
is.
sorry, I can't believe I just did that.
Are you tired of the Winter Olympics? Are you excited for the Winter? Tell me about the Winter Olympics. Do you like them? Do you care? I love them. I think they're great.
Oh my God.
Like the hockey,
Yeah?
like the jumpers on the skis,
The jumperos on the skis.
Yeah.
also known as the ski jumpers.
Tony Kornheiser, who got the gig, by the way, we'll
we'll talk
mention
about that
that
in a
later.
second,
But
yeah.
he did call it, it's not really a sport. It's not a sporting event. It's just a TV show. That's what the Winter Olympics is.
And this is the guy who covers the Super Bowl.
Chew on that, Fairfax.
There you go. All right. Now, be interesting. You should wonder about the validity of the sports of the Winter Olympics, because I have a little game I'd like to play with you boys today. I like to call it Spot the Fake Olympics. There it is, right there below. Spot the Fake Olympic Sport. Okay, I will describe a sport, and you tell me if it's a real Olympic sport or if it's a figment of my overactive imagination. First of all, skiers must fire a gun while in either the prone or standing position at targets 50 meters away. Sport or not a sport?
Sport. Skeet and shoot?
Biathlon, actually.
Sport.
All right.
What's the skeet and shoot?
I don't.
Did I just make that up?
That's something you do in your backyard when you're all alone.
All right. Sport 2. A large metal disc is sent down a gigantic snow-covered cliff. After traveling several hundred feet, it lands in a slot with a designated monetary value. The athlete with the largest cash haul wins. Sport or not a sport?
That's not a sport. What is this? What is this freaking?
That was Plinko.
That was Plinko.
That was
Thank
Plinko.
you.
Winter Olympic Plinko.
Thank you. From our most famous show, Bob Barker.
Bob Barker, participate. Number 3, a team of 4 sends a 19-kilogram stone from one end of an icy lane to the other. On each throw, one member decides where the stone should be aimed. One pushes the stone, and the other 2 sweep the ice in front of it as it makes its way along.
Sport. Curling.
The mighty sport of curling.
I was going to say something else.
What were we going to say?
I am
I
not
think
gonna
last
share
Winter
now.
Olympics
Skeet
I
and
watched it
stones.
forever because I was mesmerized.
Skeet and
Skeet
push.
shoot.
Skeet and push.
All right, sport number 4, final sport. Competitors must fight an angry polar bear with a bow staff while riding on a snowmobile.
Sport.
Jeff?
Not a sport.
Not a sport. That's right. I made it the whole
Get
thing.
outta
That's
here.
true. That's true.
Triple H was going to compete in that thing.
Sport or not a sport? Wow, that was a hell of a thing right there.
Awesome.
So Tony Kornheiser is going to be on Monday Night Football. Are you excited?
You know, I'm excited. I love him. I listen to him every morning on the way to work, and I watch all his programs. You know, on ESPN on that there boob tube. I like to read his columnettes in the Washington Post,
yes.
which I mentioned to you guys today in the office. It's funny. The headline on the online version, at least of the Post story, was "The Post's Tony Kornheiser will be on MNF Monday Night Football." Okay. How are they going to claim Tony Kornheiser when they've been trying to put him out to pasture for the past 3 years? Starting now, honestly, with the columnettes, the 30-word articles he's been writing. I just found that interesting. But
He was his agent?
Yeah, I am his agent. Tony Kornheiser deserves more money. Okay, but listen, the guy is an incredible talent. He's the best at what he does, and he said in an interview, he said, "I got to do it because And this was kind of his martyr, his martyr way of doing things. But it's going to kill other opportunities for other writers if he doesn't do that and take that next step. And maybe that's a great thing for guys getting into the industry to see that may be a light at the end of the tunnel, because we're making bank now. I mean, it's not like we need that gig, but it's a good thing to see there at the end of the tunnel.
Jeff, do you think Kornheiser? I mean, he has exposure on a national level, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things,
he has exposed himself on a national level.
Indeed,
Right.
indeed. But how many people in Nebraska and Oklahoma actually know who Tony Kornheiser is? Is he going to play in Middle America?
Who knows? I mean, he's a big complainer, so I think the East Coast people are going to love him. West Coast, I'm just not sure. We were talking beforehand whether Wilbon might have been a better choice, just because as far as analysis, he may be a little stronger than Tony, who just usually pokes fun at Wilbon and does a lot of complaining. So we'll have to see. Miller didn't take, and he was kind of a unique.
Yeah, but look,
unique talent, but,
Kornheiser's obviously got better sports credentials than Dennis Miller does.
But is he good enough to hang with Madden and those boys?
Oh,
But
I don't know.
here's the thing: Kornheiser is good at what he does. He is a complainer, but how can you complain for 2 to 3 straight hours during a football game? What is there to be upset about, especially when you have a contract like he's getting? There's not much else in the world that can make you upset. I think Wilbon was a better choice. We talked about it earlier. He knows more about football. I think and you said, he can't talk about the Beach Boys during a football game.
He's going to have to stick to the subject for 3 hours or 3.5 hours, and I think that's going to be a change. He can't just hit eject and start talking about the Drifters and the OJs.
And he has to actually show respect for the people he's working with, unlike the ones he works with on his radio show.
Andy Pulley's not going to be up there with him.
He won't be able to walk all over Andy Pulley's sports centers.
Actually, it's worse. It's Joe Theismann now.
God, that's another
Break
one.
his other leg.
All right. Oh, my God!
Hey, that's for you, Redskins fans.
Good God. That's a giant fan talking. Point counterpoint time here on the Fairfax Sports Report. I happen to like the Burger King dancing food commercial. In fact, it's almost every dream I've ever had. Dancing a woman dressed as a hamburger dancing around. You didn't like it.
Yeah, let's just discredit Greg right now by saying he used to work at Burger King.
It's
in
true,
high
I
school.
did.
He's still getting
He has
kickbacks.
that bias, as if you were going to tell me that they did a commercial about skycaps. I was one of those. I would love that commercial.
Yes.
No, really, honestly, guys, it was terrible. It was a woman dancing around like a stupid tomato. You called it a dream. It was a freaking nightmare, man. It was a woman dancing around like mayonnaise. That was disgusting.
I hope that was
Well,
mayonnaise.
you just don't have you don't have any appreciation of liturgical dance, and that's unfortunate. You need to get more cultured.
Listen, you see that? It says good, bad, or creepy.
Creepy.
If you had to pick one of those, I would pick creepy.
I'd pick good.
Of course you would.
Jeff?
I just want a Big Mac.
Hey, that commercial really did its job. Hey, go to our competitor.
In Living Color versus Chappelle Show, I happen to think Chappelle Show is actually funnier than Living Color. I loved Living Color when I was a kid, but I think Chappelle Show is edgier. It's more probing. It's a lot less of the head detective and more stuff that deals with today's headlines.
So you go and you pick the worst skit that In Living Color ever did, which was the head detective. In Living Color is the greatest comedy show ever to be put on our television set,
Really?
including, ladies and gentlemen, Saturday Night Live.
Wow.
It kills everything. Chappelle,
Wow.
I'm a great fan of Chappelle's show, okay?
Yes.
In fact, I am Rick James,
Oh.
okay? But the In Living Color originality, the stars that show made, and the long time
Fly
that it went
Girls.
on for.
Fly Girls.
Fly
Look how
Girls.
many stars it made, okay? It had David Allen Greer, Jamie Foxx, Jim Carrey, all the Wayans guys who are now doing scary movies.
There's eight of them.
Scary Movie 8. But come on, I mean, it's the greatest show ever.
And real briefly, Madden, you say done.
He was talking about punting or going for it from the 25-yard line.
There you go.
He's done.
And BJ, you say good.
How could you ever saying that John Madden doesn't belong
You've
on
bought
football
you've
all right.
bought
is
you bought his
un-American.
video
All right.
game since 1990.
Okay,
It's
fine.
un-American.
Coming up on the Fairfax Sports Network, a plethora of things. This week, boys, basketball, Chantilly at Westfield, Saturday at 11, Monday at 5, Cox, Comcast, Verizon, Channel 10, Game of the Week. Watch it. It's good. www.fairfaxsportsnetwork.com on the web. You can email us and witness the wonderfulness of our photo gallery. CCI Screen Printing, thanks for underwriting us, 703-978-0257. And Quality Care Forward Service Center, servicing all makes and models. 703-383-6299. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching the Fairfax Sports Report. As always, I really appreciate you tuning in. Hope you all enjoy the Winter Olympics this weekend. Hope you get out and see some wrestling action and some gymnastics action. When we come back next week, we'll talk all about basketball and have some more exciting preview such and stuff.
And actually, on next week, I will be doing wrestling moves on Jeff. Yes.
Wow.
A takedown.
Oh my.